Erik Wolf is recognized internationally as the founder of the food tourism industry. And as such, he does speak publicly in the US and abroad, and he is a go-to culinary tourism resource for media all over the world. Erik says that he considers food a way to communicate and connect with people. And the more Erik traveled, he says, the more he realized that many destinations have wonderful but untold stories in the form of truly unique food and drink. Erik will show how and share how recent research by the World Food Travel Association has provided a better understanding of food buying behaviors and how, in many ways, we are all foodies. Please help me welcome Erik Wolf for his talk, Catching the Food Tourism Wave.
In the late 1990s, I was living in New York, and I was a professor of tourism marketing at New York University. And I was teaching my class, and one day after class, a student came up. She was from Singapore. She used to work for Singapore Airlines, and she goes, "Oh, Professor Wolf, I would really like to encourage you to come to Singapore. It's an amazing culinary destination." And I had never really done much in Asia or thought much about Asia before, but I took that and I said, "Well, that's nice, thank you." She goes, "Yes, and it's very Western-like. It'll be a very easy transition, and you'll really enjoy it." So I said, "Well, thank you." And I had no idea when, if I would ever get to Singapore. Well, lo and behold, the following year, I was working for a company in San Francisco, a multilingual website development company, and they said, "We need a project manager. You're going to Singapore." I thought, okay. So I was on a plane, and 15 hours of flying, 24 hours being awake, and I got into Singapore, all the palm trees as you're coming into the airport, and the hot air when you get off the plane, and the humidity, and I thought, wow. So I had traveled for so long, I was up for so long, I got to the hotel, I was tired, I was hungry, I was excited, but being a food traveler, being a culinary tourist, I couldn't just go to bed. Most people would collapse in bed, or maybe get a quick bite to eat in the hotel restaurant and collapse in bed. No. I'm an explorer, so I went to the shopping mall across the street, and I don't know if you know, but the shopping malls in Singapore are very small. They're maybe 2 stories. They're not really big. I found a grocery store in the back of the shopping mall. And remember, this is, being up for 24 hours, jet lag, in coach. I was not in business class. And I was just amazed at all of the fruits and vegetables I had never seen before, and the spices, and the baked goods, and the frozen goods, and the drinks, and things that I had never seen before, never even dreamed of. Dragon fruit, wow, that looks like it's from a sci-fi movie, And some really, really exciting things. And so about 2.5 hours later, I emerged from the grocery store, bags in hand, and I made it back to the hotel. And it was at that point in my life that I knew that I was not like other people. And I think that was my first foray into introduction that perhaps I was onto something with food tourism. But then in 2001, I moved to Portland, and that became a bit of a rapture for me, just living here and being privileged to partake in the amazing quality of everything that we have to offer here. And it was also amazing to me that the locals, they didn't really seem to, it didn't almost register with the locals. They took it for granted. Oh yeah, we've got amazing carrots, berries, fruit, salmon, meat, wines, beers, the list wouldn't stop. But they just were very casual about it, and I thought, gosh, I grew up and tomatoes were white and pineapples were hard, and what you've got here is amazing. But I knew that I was in a very special place. I thought maybe it was just me being weird again. But then I knew I was in a very special place when I was at the grocery store, and there was a guy behind me in line, and he put a 6-pack of microbrews on the conveyor belt. And he was dressed as an electrician or a plumber, a workman. And I thought, everyone in Portland loves great food and drink. I'm definitely in the right town. So that was really the epiphany. I had a bit of a eureka moment with food tourism. So I started to catch the food tourism wave. In 2003, I founded the International Culinary Tourism Association, which has been the name of the association for the past 10 years until we rebranded last year. And I founded the association to serve the long tail of our industry. And the long tail of our industry, I don't know if you know this book by Chris Anderson, it came out in 2006, but the metaphor of the long tail is with a comet. And what Chris mentioned in his book was that all of the businesses at the end of the comet, the long tail, which are the mom and pop stores, the independent restaurants, the 1 and 2 type outlets, versus all the big chains at the front of the tail. All of the smaller businesses at the long tail are worth infinitely more to an economy than the bigger chains. And I thought, wow, that's really profound. So one of the things that the association did was to serve the long tail of the food, drink, and tourism industries. And shortly after I founded the International Culinary Tourism Association, I founded the Oregon Culinary Tourism Association. And that was the first organization that really started to package food and drink in the state. Travel Oregon was aware of the wines, and they were doing a little bit. Travel Portland was aware of the beer scene in Portland, and they were doing a little bit. But we were the first organization that really took the charge and said, okay, we're publishing an Oregon Culinary Escapes Guide. We're going to position food as an attraction to visitors, front and center on the map. Hey, we're a great food town. And I think that was that legacy that really, it helped to propel, I think, what was already there. I can't take credit for Portland being a great food town. Those are the raw ingredients and the chefs and the creativity that's already there, but I think that we were the ones that first packaged it. And then, so over the past 10 years, this has been a bit of a journey for us. And what we learned was some of the things that we've learned from our own members, but also what we've learned from our research. And in 2007, we did some research with the Travel Industry Association of America and Gourmet Magazine, and we discovered that culinary travelers were definitely smarter, but not necessarily richer, and they also skewed a bit either middle-aged or even younger. And this was contrary to what people thought. Everyone thought that culinary travelers or foodies were older and richer. And our research showed that that wasn't the case. We discovered that foodies spend $100,000 US per minute while traveling. That's 24 hours a day. So, and when you multiply that out, that's actually a $52 billion US a year industry. And that, remember, that data is 6 years old, and we're updating that data this year. And then in 2010, we released some more research, and that was called psychoculinary profiling research. And what we discovered that there were actually 13 different profiles of foodie behaviors. And what this, this is all research speak, but what it boils down to is, how many of you have had a friend that says, oh my gosh, you've got to go to this new steak, Thai, Japanese, Italian, whatever, restaurant down the street, it's amazing. And you go and you hated it. Has this happened to any of you? Yes, like everyone in the room, right? And the reason for that disconnect is because you had different kinds of expectations. You had an idea of something you liked in your mind. And so this psychoculinary profiling, there's 13 different profiles, everything from novice to trendy to social to ambiance to gourmet to budget. And so maybe you were, organic, localist, and social, and your friend was gourmet, trendy, and something else. And that was the reason for that disconnect. And that is some really interesting research that has woven its way into some of the new programs that we'll be announcing this year. But we also discovered over these past 10 years that food travelers are hunters. Just like when I got off the plane in Singapore, I was hunting for a great meal. But foodies, we do the same thing. We hunt for that new ingredient, that new restaurant, that new drink, that new way of cooking something, that new chef that no one has ever heard of. We follow our stomachs, and our stomachs influence destination choice. So we also know that food and drink are the only art forms that speak to all 5 human senses. You can't smell a statue or sniff a painting, or taste a painting, but you can use all 5 human senses when you are eating and drinking. Food and drink, the most important tenets of culinary tourism, or what we now call food tourism, are the fact that it's what is unique and memorable. And so we like to say that we should be selling or promoting a memory and not a meal. So if a restaurant is in the business and think they're just serving a meal, they're in the wrong business. You need to serve a memory. You need to foster that word-of-mouth promotion that is the most effective and least expensive kind of promotion. And also this notion that locals can be travelers too, especially in larger cities like Los Angeles or London or Mexico City, where you could travel literally for 3 or 4 hours to get across town to neighborhoods you would never, ever think of going to. And you still live in, say, Metro London, but you're still a foodie traveler in your own town. So this notion of actually marketing food as an attraction to locals too came out of our experience. And so today, our industry comprises 15 different subsectors. So you've got food and drink on one side, and you've got travel and hospitality on the other. And we're at the intersection of these 2 industries. So food and drink is not just restaurants. It's the wineries, distilleries, breweries. It is caterers. It is anyone who's in food production, food distribution, food factories, all of that, the farms, the farmers markets. And then you've got the travel and hospitality. So those are the inns, the lodges, the bed and breakfast, the culinary tour operators. You've also got the media. You've got academics involved in our industry too. And we all come together to share this great thing that we call food. But now let's go back to Portland. Portland now was catching the food tourism wave, and I like to say that Portland is a bit of a Disneyland for food. It's a really unique place on the planet where chefs and cooks alike are free to make absurd flavor combinations come to life and make them a reality. Things like pear and Stilton ice cream, where you saw, I think Steve, was it Steve or someone earlier, had some slides up there of some unusual ice cream combinations. We do that in Portland. Other cities, they might be scared to do that, or you might find one trendy flavor. But no, in Portland, we've got all 32 trendy flavors at 14 different micro creameries, right? So Portland had started to grow really into its foodie shoes, so to speak. So it was things like the TV shows, the Leverage series or the Grimm series, that really helped to establish Portland. And then the Portlandia episodes too, of course. And my colleagues from Sweden who are here today, they did the research before coming to Portland. They wanted to make sure they were caught up on the local Portland culture. They had even seen episodes that I haven't seen yet. They were telling me about things that happened in the series. But if you haven't seen the brunch episode or the chicken in the restaurant episode, you must. And they said, but is that really true? Do people act like that in Portland? Yeah, we do. I mean, the other day at lunch, I was having lunch with someone, and we had to have 20 questions about how it was last night at the Hotel Modera. We had a lamb burger. My lovely PR woman over there, Kuvi from Denver, and we were talking with the waiter about the lamb burger, and it was a 15-minute discussion that ensued about how it was prepared, how it was seasoned, how it should be served. Forget the rest of the people in the restaurant. This was the three of us were discussing. This was important. We had to get the lamb burger right. Anyway. So it was partly that. It was partly due to people like Karen Brooks and Chris Onstead, some real foodie media visionaries that are out there who are really pushing all the right buttons, who have a great palette to work with here, that it's almost easy to push buttons because the buttons keep lighting up. Events like Feast, where Mike Thielen he had this vision for turning Portland into a huge foodie festival city, and he succeeded. And the first Feast event was last September, and he'll continue that. And then also this love affair that the New York City media seems to have with Portland. We're very privileged to be in this position, but it's also kind of cool, wow, the people in New York really love Portland. Well, we love you too. And anyway, so Portland has ascended into this place of global reputation in the foodie community. I know that when I moved to Portland in 2001 and I would travel, and I would say to people, I'm from Portland, and their eyes would glaze over. Oregon, eyes would glaze over. It's about 2.5 to 3 hours south of Seattle by car. Oh, okay. And I always had to define Portland in context of Seattle. And that always made me uncomfortable because I knew Portland could stand on its own foodie feet and be its own great world-class city. And we're finally there. And no small thanks to the folks at Travel Oregon and Travel Portland, who are really doing amazing work to take the legacy that we really started and to really get it out there. And now they're doing amazing things, and that's why we've got this amazing reputation that we've got. So then there's this notion of ubiquity as well with food and drink. We're really all foodies, or I think we all have the potential to be foodies. Food is very personal and pervasive. It's like buying perfume for women or ties for men. We don't always like things that people might choose for us. Or think about your own behavior when you go on vacation. You come back and you're always talking about the food and the weather, right? Those are the first things you talk about. How is the weather? How is the food? Forget the museums, the hotel, and all that. How is the weather and how is the food? Food and drink are basic human needs, and we all share this common human interest to eat and drink. It's something that we all desire. And I think, you think about food culture, from birth to death, we use food for reward, celebration, commiseration, health, healing, and indulgence. It's a common denominator among all people, and that's really significant. So even if you're not in the food industry, you're in the tourism industry, or you're in economic development or government or whatever you're in, think about that notion that we all share that together. So to wrap things up and to think about how you can catch the food tourism wave as well, I'd like to give you a little recipe card, if you will, some ideas that will help you, I think, capture the food tourism wave. And again, it doesn't matter if you're not a food person or you're in the travel industry or vice versa. It's a common denominator that we all share. Food and travel are inextricably related. They're always going to be together, and we all travel and we all eat. So even if you think you're not in the industry, you really are. First of all, I would recommend to follow a path of creative destruction. And by that, I mean to really destroy the status quo of your business. Don't actually go and do it, but think about it. Think about what it would look like to deconstruct your business, pick it apart. Think about your business processes, how you're doing your sales, how you're doing your marketing, how you're doing your PR. Are you doing PR? Your technology that you use or don't use. And maybe take a day off from work once a year and have a little brainstorm session with your staff or your business partner and think about how to deconstruct this and build it back up again into something even better. And I would say sweat the details. Details are very important. When I had dinner with one of our speakers last week, we went to a Grain and Gristle here in Portland, which is my new favorite burger in Portland. And gosh, I've got to tell you, I could spend 15 minutes talking about that burger, but then I would be a true Portlander by doing that. But in any case, the details of this burger: house-made ketchup, a brioche bun from a local baker, Oregon country beef, and then these onion rings that were served with it. They were the size of like a wedding ring. They were really small, and they were so tasty, and I could have eaten, until they would have kicked me out of the restaurant. So they worried about those details, and those details transformed that from a burger with onion rings into one of the most amazing burgers I've ever eaten in my life. And now I'm here telling all of you about this. Consider the service journey. The notion of a service journey is a new concept. I learned about this when I was talking in Bilbao, Spain last November. And it's kind of all the rage in Europe right now, with this notion of a service journey, where you look at and analyze the experience of your customer or your visitor from everything from cradle to grave. So, I'm thinking about traveling somewhere. Okay, so what is the thought process that they're going through when they're starting that journey? Are they talking to friends and family? Are they going on the web? Are they talking to a travel agent at a flight center, perhaps? So this whole notion of everything from how they find out about it, how they experience it, how they get from the airport to the hotel, what their reception was like at the hotel, all of this is built into the composite picture that we get when we travel. If you had a really bad cab driver from the airport, your picture of Portland or wherever you are is going to be tainted. So this notion of service journey ties into it. It's the same thing with servers in restaurants. So consider your service journey and have you really thought about everything? Maybe you're just a restaurant, but how did that person get to your restaurant? How did they find out about it? What even compelled them to visit your town in the first place? And use technology. I know a lot of us, especially in the food industry, are scared of technology, and it can be daunting, but truthfully, you can save a lot of money and a lot of time by embracing it. And I won't tell you all the technical tools that you can use, but suffice it to say, if you're not a techie, there's several students in the room that would be happy to help you for low cost or no cost, just to get that experience. But they might be able to implement a new process in your business that could help move you forward and save you some time and money. And tied to the notion of service journey, I forgot to mention that I think our ultimate goal is really to create raving fans. You want people to come back and do your marketing for you. I've always said that the residents of a town should be the best ambassadors. So if we're 2 million plus people here in Portland, that's 2 million people out there when we travel that can be marketing this area, right? And so I know we have someone from Memphis here and someone from outside Boston or some people from British Columbia. Well, how many people live in British Columbia? And they can all be foodie ambassadors to get people to come to your destination. So we want to create those raving fans, people that can't stop talking about all the great things that your destination has or that your foodie business has or that your drink business has. Let them do the marketing for you. And then to become an active part of that long tail, we talked about the notion of the long tail. Get involved with the tourism office. Get involved with organizations like the Chefs Collaborative. Maybe a state restaurant association doesn't work for you, but there are other organizations that can help. And perhaps, lastly, inject humor into everything you do. We're all human, and we all love a good joke. At the end of the day, we're just people. So let's kick back, have a brew or a glass of wine, enjoy each other, and share the wave. Thank you.